Men, God has placed us as the head of our families, and there's a huge responsibility attached to it. So let's jump in and learn how to be the biblical man that God not only designed, but expects us to be.
Hey everybody, it's your boy David. On today's podcast, I want to talk a little bit about biblical manhood. This is going to be the first in a series of videos where what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help men really understand what true biblical manhood is, biblical headship is, and how we can walk in it and have the success that I know we all desire in our families, with our wives, with our children, and everything that God has already promised us in His Word if we walk according to what He's already told us to do, which sadly, a lot of us don't, or a lot of us want to know how, but we struggle with it. I just want to tell you a little bit about my story. I really want to make the focus about you men, but I think it's important for you all to understand a little bit about where I came from and how I even got to this point. One of the reasons I'm starting this podcast is because I want men to really understand and walk in what God has already ordained for them to do. And many men don't realize what it is they're missing out on in their lives because of this lack of an understanding in this area. So for me, I was blessed. I grew up in a family. I had a father, unlike a lot of men nowadays, at least that have fathers that are in their lives or that are trying to lead and guide them. But I had a father who did the best that he could. He died when I was 16 and was a very hard-working man. I had 7 sisters and me. So my dad was always working, and the few times I did get to see him, he was usually sitting at the kitchen table, nodding off, falling asleep, and never really got to spend the amount of time with him that I would have loved to. But again, one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is, as parents, we do the best that we know how to do. And my dad was, I believe, doing the best that he knew how to do. But regardless of that, there were still some things that were lacking in my life that affected me long term. Things I didn't even realize until years later. God brought an amazing woman into my life, my wife, and she really was the first person that really helped me understand what true biblical manhood is, what it was, and what I needed to be doing. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around it. First and foremost, it's sad that a woman, and I don't mean this in a negative way because you can learn from anyone, but it's sad when there's such a lack of biblical men that step up and lead the younger men. The Bible tells us that the older men should be teaching the younger men. I never had that. The men I had in my life were, when I look back now, they were telling me to make decisions that were bad choices in my life. So ended up being bad choices, but at the time they seemed like they were good choices. You know what I mean? Anyway, God brought this woman into my life, and once she really started helping me understand what I needed to understand, I'm not going to say it was easy. It was hard. It was hard on her because her expectation as a kingdom woman was looking to her man who God had placed at the head of this home, who wasn't walking in alignment with what God expected. So you can just imagine the hurt, the pain, all the things that go along with not walking according to God's rule book, so to speak. I've had failed marriages. I have blown it. Like I'm sure a lot of you watching and listening to this podcast, you've blown it. We've all blown it. Thank God for Jesus Christ. Thank God for His mercy and His forgiveness that we can start again and we can get it right. So my yelling or my echoing to you guys today is, let's get it right. Life is short. We are here but a minute and then we're gone. Let's all finish strong. Let's step up and be the men that God has called us to be. So, all right, so let's get into this message here that I wanted to talk about. Most men, they identify themselves with what it is that they do. I guarantee you, if you go up to any man on the street and you say, hey, how you doing? My name's David, such and such, tell me a little bit about yourself. 9 out of 10 men, the first thing they're going to tell you is that, I'm a fireman or I'm an electrical engineer. That's just how we are kind of conditioned and programmed by society. Sadly, most people, not even men, really understand who they are. And until you understand who you are, you're never going to be able to operate in the manner that God has designed us to operate. So let me take you back a little bit. So men, I just want you to think about when you were a little boy, what did you want to do? You usually wanted to play cowboys and Indians. And most of us wanted to be the cowboy. We wanted to be the sheriff. We wanted to be the hero or the, so to speak, in whatever games that we played. And a lot of us still take that into our adulthood because I truly believe that is how God designed us, that as leaders, as protectors, as the hero in the story, so to speak. That is what I believe that he put in us as men when he designed us. And I truly believe that most men still desire deep down inside, even if they've lost that desire, I believe they truly still desire to be that hero to their wives, to their children, to their church, whatever people that are in their life. So when you think about the word hero from a hero standpoint, how about us striving to be our wife's hero or our children's hero? You know what I mean? And even if you're single and you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, start doing it now. Start walking in it now. So when God brings that amazing woman into your life, you've already been walking in and practicing these principles, and you won't have to endure a lot of the headache and a lot of the heartache that goes along with trying to do things the world's way, if that makes any sense. So if you are a born again believer in Jesus Christ and you are a child of the King, you are a child of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And this King, our God, has already given us the rule book, the Holy Bible. When you give your life to Christ, you are a new creature. And I just want to go a little bit deep on this. Right now, we all live in this earthly realm. Let's just look at it as kingdoms. Let's look at earth as earth being a kingdom. So before you gave your life to Christ, you were part of this earthly kingdom. And the Bible tells us that who is the prince of this earth? Says that Satan is. So if you were operating without knowing who Christ was or living your life according to the way the Bible tells us to do so, you are operating under this earthly kingdom, which is Satan's territory. But when you give your life to Christ and put your trust in Christ, you are now a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, even though you live here on earth. And the point I'm trying to make is, once you give your life to Christ, we are expected by God to govern ourselves and live our lives according to what he's told us in his word. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Okay, understand what I'm saying? So when it comes down to obedience to what he's told us to do. If you love me, follow me. That's what Jesus Christ said. And I'm just trying to paint you a picture so you can understand, even though you live in this world, we are, as Christians, we are governed by the kingdom of God. So just remember, as you walk this out, these teachings and what I'm trying to help you understand, remember to walk in God's authority and what God has already told us to do in his word, if that makes any sense. The only way that you're going to ever really know how to rule is you have to open the rule book. And I don't want to call it a rule book. I don't want to diminish what it is, the Bible. But that is God's love letter to us. That is what he left us to show us the precepts that we need to be following. And if you're not in that book and you're not reading it and you're not trying to understand it and you're not searching the scriptures, trying to understand what it is that is expected of you, not only as a husband and as a father and as a man, you're never going to understand it. You're going to get caught up in what you hear your friends say, what other people tell you you should be doing, and you end up getting more chaos and more disorder in your life. The Bible is what teaches us how to govern our families, how to lead our families. The Bible teaches us the correct way to govern our homes, to lead our families, and really just simply to align our life choices with God. In a nutshell, that's what it comes down to. So when you live your life and lead your life according to what he said in his word, God will 100% back you with the authority that you're going to need to be able to walk it out, to carry it out. I want you to write this down. Get you a pen. I'll give you a moment to grab a pen or grab your phone, or if you're on your phone, go to your notepad. But I want you to write this down because this is powerful. So let me know when you're ready. All right, you ready? Many of your tomorrows will be determined by how you ruled today. Did you get that? I'm going to repeat it. Many of your tomorrows will be determined by how you lived or live today. Now, as you're writing that down and you're pondering that, just think about everything I've said up to this point and how that applies. So when you lead by his kingdom agenda and his principles, you're not only freeing up the people that are around you to be who God created them to be, but you're also not inviting into your life and into your family the chaos, the disorder, and all that goes along with that, the destruction that goes along with that. I want everyone that's listening and watching to understand that this is a real battle. I know a lot of you may have heard of spiritual battle going on in the heavenlies, and I truly don't believe personally that a lot of Christian people really understand it at the depth that they should understand it, because we are in a real war. This is a real battle. Satan is out to steal, kill, and destroy not only you because you are the head, but your family. Think about it. Have you ever heard that saying, if you kill the head, the body is dead? Okay, if you look at the order that God has set up, it says Christ is the head of man, man is the head of his wife. God is a God of order. He's not a God of chaos. So when you do things in order and the way he's already designed you to do them, God is obligated as our king to do what he's already promised you in his word. Now, when you get outside of that and you start falling back into sin and you start doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing, you're opening the door to the enemy. You're allowing all the chaos and the disorder and the destruction right back into your home. So I want to go a little bit deeper on the whole spiritual warfare thing, just to kind of break it down. This may blow some of your minds, but the spiritual world is more real than this physical world that we live in. I'll say that again. The spiritual world is more real than this physical world that we live in. So since we all live in this physical world, which seems real to us because we're the ones experiencing it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You can't really wrap your head around the fact that the spiritual world is more real than this realm. Well, let me take you back to the beginning. Who existed before anything was ever created? God did, right? The Bible said that God is a spirit, and those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So the basics of that is God is a spirit. Remember, Adam, where we all came from, was made from the dust of the earth, the physical. He didn't become spiritual until God breathed life into him. I hope I didn't lose you all on that one. Just trying to give you a little bit of context to help you understand a little bit more as far as the spirit realm. The biggest thing I'm trying to get you to understand is just to realize that there's a real battle going on. Satan is trying to steal, kill, and destroy. And even though you can't see the enemy, trust me, his presence is all around you 24 hours a day. Just like we have angels that are assigned to us at birth, Satan, who is a copycat, he mimics everything that God has already done, does the exact same thing. Not only are there angels assigned to you, he has the demonic realm or demons assigned to you as well. Now, I want to ask you guys a question, and I want you to really think about it when I ask this. When you step out your door to leave your home every day, again, even if you're retired, when you wake up in the morning, does earth, heaven, and hell take notice. Like, oh crap, David's up, or John's up, or Tina's up. Think about it. Do your children look at you with confidence or doubt? How does your wife look at you? A man who is walking in the authority and the headship or the biblical manhood that God has assigned to him, which he's assigned to all of us, I tell you right now, your woman or your wife, she won't be able to resist a man who is following. My wife tells me all the time, it's attractive to her to see me chasing after God. And that's what you want. You want to be attractive to your spouse. And that's what I have to do to get her to be attracted to me. You know, that's what I'm going to do. But I'm doing it because I not only desire, but I know that's what God expects of me. But it's nice to know that that's how God designed them. Because when you go back to what I said a few moments ago about the order, God being a God of order, he's placed a woman where she falls underneath the man, not in a negative way. Don't take that in a negative way when it says that man is the head of his wife. It's, again, just goes back to God being a God of order. She is your equal. She is your co-heir with Christ. She has value. Also remember that God placed her in your life for a reason. So don't lose sight of that. Don't discount that. Don't devalue that. The point I'm trying to make is that she's in your life for a reason. Do other men desire to emulate the man that they see when they look at you, the character that they see? And I'm not saying that in a prideful way, that you should be trying to do things because you want people to take notice. One thing I like to say a lot is that as believers in Jesus Christ, we should be practicing everything that we do for an audience of one. And that audience of one is God. That should be who we're seeking to please. We shouldn't give a crap about what man thinks of us, because we know whose we are and who we are, because we belong to Christ. We are kings and priests, as the Bible tells. So one of the last things I wanted to touch on just for this week is I want to talk about alignment. Let me just kind of break down what an alignment is. I'll use an analogy of a vehicle. So all of us have cars. Your tires, when you look at how the car is made, they sit on these, they have these tie rods that connect to the wheel, and they have to do these alignments where they can turn the tie rods in and out so that the tires are aligned perfectly. And if these tires aren't aligned perfectly, it causes your tires to wear unevenly and ends up causing you to have to go replace your tires sooner than you would want to. What I'm trying to make is, if you're married and having severe difficulties in your marriage, it's usually because one or both of you are out of alignment. And what really saddens me is that most men, including me at one time in my life, didn't even understand what being in alignment with God even meant. You ever heard that cliche where they say, oh, just because you're in the garage, it doesn't make you a car? Well, just because I claim I'm a Christian doesn't mean I'm living my life the way God has ordained me to. Men, we need to step up. We need to be the leaders that God has called us to be. And what's crazy is these same men that don't even understand what alignment is, they will strongly expect their wives to align and get in step, so to speak, in the order that God has placed them. If you're not walking in obedience to everything that God has already told you in his word that he expects from you as the head of your home, as the man, there's no way she's ever going to be able to align under you properly the way God designed it. And remember, like I said earlier, God is a God of order, not a God of chaos. And if you want to have order in your life, you have to get in line or in the order of things that he's already told us to do. And the only way you're going to know how to do what that is you got to crack open that book. You got to make it a priority in your life, not your video games, not your golf game, not hanging out with your buddies. The Bible and God need to be first in your life, because there's no way you're going to ever really be able to understand what it is you need to be doing if you're not reading the rule book, so to speak, the Bible. When I look at the world today, it kind of looks like the society has kind of fallen into the black hole of manlessness. I mean, just look at what's going on in the world today with all this, people don't even know what gender they are, transgender, flip-flopping, all this crazy that you see going on in the world. Tell me it doesn't seem that way. Like our whole society, it's like they're trying to demasculate all the men. I wanted to give you another analogy in regards to prisons. So I want you to imagine a prison. If you don't know somebody that's in jail, I'm sure you've seen a TV show or you've seen something, you know what a prison is and you know what prisoners are because they've done something wrong and they've gotten locked away. Just think about it. All these men and women at one point were free. They were able to run, they were able to play, they were able to work, they were able to dream, they were able to love, they were able to do all these things. And now they're locked behind a cage. And I can almost guarantee you, if you look into the family history of any of these men or women, you will almost always find that they grew up in fatherless homes. Most of them grew up without a father or just even a man that could protect them or even guide them. And even worse than that, a lot of them became victims to even other men, whether it was physical abuse, sexual abuse, or something just like that. They didn't have that man in their life, like I said a moment ago, to protect them and to even guide them in the way that they should go. And because of this lack of men that have stepped up to walk in the calling that they were supposed to walk in, these men go to sleep at night in these cells, covering their bodies with these thin sheets of regret, shame, and many of them even insecurity. One of the reasons that I'm so passionate about biblical manhood is that if we don't change something and start waking up men, I don't care if you're saved or not, if you know Christ or not, all men need to hear this message. So if you have a friend or somebody you know needs to hear this, make sure you send it to them, share it to them. But if we don't do something sooner than later, just think about the next generation. Just look at how far we've already fallen just by the way things are today in this world. And I'm not trying to beat any of you up. There was a time when I didn't understand it myself, and I'm still learning every day. But you got to start somewhere, or you're never going to be better. Your home's never going to be better. Your family's never going to be better until you get in alignment with what God has already told us to do, men, as the leaders in our home. Now, here's a stat for you. Did you all know that 70% of all prisoners, or the people I just spoke of a little bit ago, come from fatherless homes? 70%. Can you say clue? And here's another one for you. Did you know that 80% of rapists that deal with anger also come from fatherless homes? You see the theme here? And I'm not making this about fatherlessness, but in a way I am, because if these fathers had heard a message like this and were convicted to walk in the biblical manhood, the biblical mandate that God has given them, the statistics wouldn't be that high. You're going to have a few that are going to fall through the cracks just because we all have free will. But the Bible also says that if you raise up a child in the way they should go, when they are old or older, they will not depart from it, meaning they'll come back to that teaching. But if there's no fathers, there's no men to emulate that in the beginning, what do you expect is going to happen? I'm not surprised by these numbers. Do you see why it's so important for men to lead correctly? Now, obviously, I'm coming from a biblical perspective because I'm a Christian man, and I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast is not a Christian. But honestly, if you do things the world's way, you're going to get what the world gets. There will be no order. There will be no peace. There will be no protection unless you get in line with what God has told us to do in His Word. And it starts with us, man. You're going to stand before God one day and you're going to give an account. You can believe it or you don't have to believe it. there's going to come a day when you're going to stand before God and he's going to ask you what you did with your marriage, what you did with your children. And the reason he's going to ask you and not her or your children is because he has placed you in the position of leadership. You are the head, not the tail. You are the head. So if there's a problem with my company and I'm the owner of the company and there's a problem in my company, I'm not going to go to Joe Schmo running the printing machine or running one of the machines. I'm going to go to my chief executive officer, the head, and ask him, what is the problem in this company? That's exactly what God's going to do. It's funny how the Bible gives us, there's so many worldly examples just for how God set things up. Because again, there's no new ideas. God created everything. Even the ideas that man has, God created all of that. So just look at that example. That's what God is going to do. He's going to hold you accountable and responsible for how you handled what he already told you to do. And now that you're listening to this and you've already heard it, you're without excuse. So you're even more responsible now. Unless the Lord builds the house, meaning your house, your home, the laborers labor in vain. And those of you that don't know what that means, that basically is saying that unless God is the head of everything in your home, in your life, you're basically spinning your heels, trying to figure it out on your own. And the sooner you get that, the better you start walking in the destiny that God ordained when he created you, and the better your life and your family and everything else that you have going on will begin to be. So be sure to tune in next week, guys, as we continue learning what it really takes to be a man, what it takes to be a husband, what it takes to be a father, what it takes to be the leader that God designed all of us to be. There's a saying that I love that says, when you know better, you do better. So I'm hoping after this podcast that most of you know better. Next week, I'm going to start getting into the meat of what I believe it is we all have to start doing as men to make these changes so that we can walk in the way that God designed us to walk in. Something I want you all to practice this week. I want you to be intentional in everything you do, intentional in everything that you think, and everything that you say. And the only way you're going to know what to think, what to say, and what to do is you have to open your Bible and you have to look at what Christ has already told us we need to be doing. Love your enemies. Bless those that persecute you. I don't have time to go into the whole list, but you get the idea. Get in the Gospels and learn and understand what Christ told us to do. Read the epistles, Apostle Paul. They tell us how we're supposed to live our lives, govern our lives. Get in your word. It is vital. If somebody goes out and buys a brand new little Finkelhopper, we'll call it, as my wife likes to say, or Dinglehopper, whatever it is, just some little gadget, and you don't know how it works, what's the first thing you do? You open the manual to try to see how it works, okay? So you can understand it. And most importantly, you won't do like me and break it. Well, I break them anyway, even after the fact, but that's a whole other story. The point I'm trying to make is the Bible is our rule book. It tells us how we need to be living our lives. Get in the rule book. Get in your word. That's the only way you're going to know. So before you click away, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on any of the content I have coming up here in the next few weeks. Also, be sure to share it, be sure to like it, and comment. I love to hear what it is you guys have to say. So until next time, be intentional. Love you guys.